Welcome to the full moon in Aquarius and a huge month ahead for us astrologically with the eclipses happening this next month of August. Big Leo eclipse as well as a Pisces eclipse coming. We have also some big shifts of the planets with Venus moving into her home sign of Libra, but that's going to come after a Venus-Mars square that's in effect right now during this huge full moon in Aquarius, which we're going to talk about today to begin. And in light of the nodes moving into Aquarius and Leo, and this is a big shift after the last 18 months. So I got some charts to look at with you. We're going to step our way through the month ahead. And I invite you to think about your charts as we talk about these planetary shifts and what's happening in your specific houses with these big shifts, and especially these eclipses coming in, which are always big transformational windows for the year ahead. So I'm going to share the screen with you and talk about this huge, it feels almost like an eclipse today because we have this massive energy and literally transformative energy in the sky because of Jupiter and Pluto and Juno as part of this Aquarian full moon. And so we got to start paying attention, all of us, to where Aquarius and Leo are in our charts. And this moon begins this process in a big way. So let's talk about this. I want to show you this chart. As we could see, so this is just a few hours after the moon, but the sun is and Jupiter are exactly conjunct at 6 degrees of Leo. And as has been the week so far, the sun and Jupiter have been opposite Pluto, but also we can see that Juno's in the mix. So let's just back it up and we're just going to walk through what this means, because 6 degrees, very sensitive point in your chart right now, especially at the fixed signs of Taurus and Scorpio, Leo and Aquarius. And this is a sense of what we're moving into with the nodes now shifting into Aquarius and Leo. So let's talk about first the full moon, and then we'll get into this nodal shift because it's going to come up for us with the eclipse on August 12th. Some astrologers will talk about a Jupiter-Sun conjunction as one of the most fortunate days of the year. And it can be. I mean, it can be a great day for us and it's, enhanced by this full moon to promote ourselves or to share a message or to study wisdom and teachings, to find a teacher to be working with, to expand ourselves, to grow, to maybe we're considering trips or travels, spiritual pilgrimage of some kind. But this is a really deep process, and it's bringing up also unconscious energies for us, and probably a desire for a lot of us to become more impactful in the world, to be more intensely influential. We have, a sun opposite Pluto. And so think about, like, we're seeing this, the light of the sun and this expansive, inspired potential of Jupiter, opposite this lord of the underworld and the unconscious and the shadow. And then the moon just comes in and intensifies this and really brings to light things that maybe we push away. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment here. Maybe some energies that we haven't wanted to deal with, maybe ways that we have felt disempowered. And this could be recent. It could be for, the last few years or the last few months. If you have anything to say about that in the chat, we'd love to hear about that. This is, an active space for you to engage and share. But you've probably been feeling it this morning, or maybe even in your dreams. This is a very deeply emotionally cathartic full moon. And it also brings up for us what our role is in community, what purpose we have as leaders, creators, artists, speakers inside of a tribe or a community. And that's that Leo Aquarius axis. And we may need to feel like, um, I really got to do something about this, you know? This is a very activating moon. It's not a kind of passive, sit around kind of energy. I mean, this is quite intense, and it brings us to a place where we want to be very involved, and maybe it says I need a community to be a part of, or I need to enhance my roles in a community. And especially this evolutionary or revolutionary type of community that Aquarius represents. Aquarius is a sign of idealism, humanitarianism, humanitarianism. Uh, it can have philanthropic purposes to it, but it could also just be like very revolutionary in the sense of like it's time to protest. It's time to get out and do something about this, especially with that intensification and that power of Pluto. You know, Jupiter, Pluto by itself, like whatever we believe, or there's a sense of like faith or a kind of spiritual perspective, but also philosophical perspective. This transit right now is intensifying, like our opinions of that or our perspectives, and we may have some battles with this. And one of the battles just may be like what I want to do, Leo, versus what my friends want to do, right? Aquarius. Or a community I'm a part of. Maybe I need to leave that community. Maybe I need to find a different tribe. But what is the purpose of it? And it needs to be an evolutionary purpose. And this is because what's happening right now and what's going to continue to happen over the next 19 months is that with the nodes moving into the North Node, the dragon's head moving into Aquarius, and with the South Node or the dragon's tail moving into Leo, we have to really assess where we may be too self-focused, Leo, self-centered, kind of like too into luxury, kind of like could be like spending too much, um, kind of like not concerning ourselves as much with the world events, equality for all, our footprint in the world, ecological impact. It may be a really good time for us to read books. I'm reading quite a lot of like eco fiction right now. I'm rereading The Overstory, the most incredible book ever about the trees by Richard Powers. This book, Migrations, a great fiction book about the loss of the bird population, and a lot of it's very well written. And so we might be called to this um, sense of a greater duty. You know, I've been working for the last few years on this project, Starkatopia, which is about building out communities that are, you know, built around themes of the zodiac and archetypal education. And this idea of finding our tribe or building our tribe is really important as the North Node goes into Aquarius. So the last time that this happened, we go back about 19 years, and you want to do this in your own chart. So 2007, 2008, 2009, it was only the end of 2007. What happened then? Well, we know that it was one of the most sort of revolutionary political campaigns in the US. Barack Obama was elected that year, which was, of course, the first Black president. But it was actually about the new technologies at the time that were being used to rally people and to force a change and, you know, um, hope. That idea of hope is a very Aquarian ideal. That was the big campaign mantra. But look, they use Facebook, and a lot of the internet in new ways. I mean, Facebook was only around for a few years at that point. And there was a lot of that social media going on to help make this happen. Now, we're in the age of AI, and we obviously can all imagine that the next 18 months are going to be crazy accelerated on what's going to happen. And none of us really know. Uh, we do know that Uranus, which is a modern ruler of Aquarius, Saturn, the traditional ruler, is in Gemini and is trining Pluto. And that's going to be in effect really this year and some of next year. And that can really accelerate the technological innovation and revolutions that are happening right now. And there's a freedom or a liberating element going on there, right? Like a lot of us can make web pages in a day now ourselves by talking to our AI chatbot. And that's pretty revolutionary, right? Like, something that used to take months, years, weeks, we can literally do in hours, minutes sometimes, or just a single day. That acceleration, what is that going to mean for us, collectively? We have to ask deeper philosophical questions. And these questions really come up at this full moon because of that Jupiter Pluto opposition. Like, what do we really believe? And this can also bring us into a state of really questioning um, our deepest, theological perspectives and what's really important to us in terms of, you know, um, our faiths, and it's a question that really comes up, like the moral implications of what we're doing, with AI and with um, how fast things are moving. And we also should consider that the last time that these nodes were in Aquarius and Leo, we also had, the dot-com bubble burst kind of thing, and we had this collapse of the economy in a big way, and it's been being predicted for a number of years now, and when that happens, as that's happening, I mean, there's rents are so ridiculous, food prices are so ridiculous, hyperinflation, right? What's going on with a war, many wars. Um, Usually we see that there's a rallying for a new kind of power. It can be the youth. We will probably see more and more protests on the streets. And interestingly, the South Node was in Leo and the North Node was in Aquarius when the Berlin Wall fell. So the previous time was in 1989, 1990. Of course, that was a big break of division overall, in terms of the the entire sort of Eastern Bloc, and what that meant, um, that divisions were breaking apart and that we had this sense of coming into a more cohesive world, right? And then, of course, we had, these movements that we all remember going on at that time, like coming out of that, like grunge and, kind of film and television and things that sort of marked a kind of landmark revolution. Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn all joined in Aquarius at that time. So there might be some of that energy that we felt in the early 90s that starts to reemerge, right? And you can think back, I mean, that's a while ago for a lot of us, but you probably can think back to 2008 and 9 and take a moment to consider what was going on for you at that time and who was in your orbit, what kinds of communities were you a part of. Of course, you'd want to look back at where Aquarius and Leo are in your chart, what houses they occupy. And this is going to be really significant for one of the big transits of August, which is the solar eclipse in Leo. And just to say that there's also a lot of people in power right now, Putin and Trump and many others, who have very strong Leo placements. Some of them, the older people, 80 years old, were born with Pluto in Leo, Pluto and Leo generation, which is a very potentially totalitarian, dictatorial type of combination. It can be very royal in the best way, like it could give, but with a big generous heart, but it could also be very, very selfish, very self-focused. And so we might see with the South Node crossing Leo that it will drain the energy of those who have some Leo in their chart. It could be your sun or your moon or your rising or an entire generation. And we see through some of maybe it's that, again, that self-centeredness. I think, this could show, in the world of media or like pop stars or famous actors, we're probably going to see things like, you know, scandals or like, some things come out that the Aquarian collective are not going to be very happy about, right? And there'll be a lot of, pushing these superstars or these famous people, um, pushing them down, depressing their energy and making them seem, deflated in a lot of ways. Um, so I want to talk about the importance of working with our ego during this eclipse coming in. And right now, with this particular full moon in Aquarius, um, in the Sufi cosmology that I study quite a lot, there is a terminology called nafs. The nafs is the lower ego. It's known as the commanding self. It's the desire body, right? It's the part of us that just wants and doesn't really have a filter in terms of its reactivity, the part that gets easily angry, that operates from its passions, um, whether that's with food or even numbing out, with social media or scrolling. It just wants the dopamine hit, right? The easy fix. And so anything that we're crutching on is a reaction from the lower nafs. Now, the second layer of the nafs is what we're, trying to cultivate, um, which is that ethical witness self that starts to say, this is not serving me, it's not serving others, and it's not serving the higher being, the one that gave me life and continues to sustain my life. In the Sufi tradition, Allah has these 99 names, these 99 beautiful names. And the work for all of us, according to Ibn Arabi, who is known as the greatest sheikh, he was a master teacher, very prolific in his writings and his teachings. He talks about the fact that really that all that exists are these 99 names, meaning that there is the one. And as this great hadith says, and the hadith are phrases associated with Muhammad, it says that I was a hidden treasure that yearned to be known. This is the voice of Allah coming through. I was a hidden treasure that yearned to be known. And in that yearning, there was this divine breath called the breath of compassion, or nafas Rahmani, the breath of compassion. And one of the names of Allah is Al-Rahman, the most compassionate one. And in that compassion, it's the compassion that says, I want to be known, and I'm going to create from that place of those who can know me. And that is the great work for all of us, is to know the one that created us. But when we over-identify with ourselves as the doer, as the creator, as the royalty and the leader, and any ways that we over-identify ourselves, then we are operating from the lower nafs and not recognizing that our work is to reflect the divine attributes or the 99 names. And this is something that also is spoken about in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about, he's talking to Arjuna. He's the guide of Arjuna who has to go to this war he doesn't want to fight in. And Krishna is saying, you're not the doer. I am the doer and the done too. There's only one here. And your great work is to offer everything you do to me. And whatever tradition we follow, and I'm bringing this up again because the Sun, Jupiter opposite Pluto, we have to look to the traditions and what their medicine and their teaching are for us, and to go deep into them. So I invite you to do that. Not just play on the surface. We can't do that with a, a full moon with Pluto, but really transforming the lower self. In the tradition in Sufism, there's a third layer, and actually there's 7 levels of the nafs, but the primary texts talk about 3. The highest layer or third layer is where we are in a state of merger with our creator, our sustainer, the divine, with Allah. And we're in that when we're in zikr, where we're in this divine remembrance. And the ways that we do that is through something called fikr, which is focused attention on whatever we're doing as the body of God, as the locus of divine awareness. And so when you're in the garden and you're observing a butterfly or a lavender plant or maybe some, strawberries or tomatoes that you're growing, every one of those beings, every one of those creatures, whether it's a mineral, stone, or it's a plant or an animal, is reflecting these divine names. And the fikr is this concentration we can do on remembering Allah, remembering those names through that being. And so when you eat, you take a bite of food, you want to come into divine remembrance at that moment. And each of these different kinds of food that we eat maybe even reflect different kinds of qualities of the divine, different attributes. I've been writing some poetry about this lately, and I can share a poem at the end. But this is an attunement process. This is a refinement process. And if we translate this kind of spiritual process we're talking about, into astrology and into therapy, we start to look at the witness self, like the king, who is the heart, known as the kalb. And the king has these subjects, right? And these are the various planets inside of us. There's a desire planet, a drive and a motivation with Mars. And there's a planet of attraction and relational desires, Venus. And there's a planet of emotional needs and the inner child, the moon. And as we start to recognize each of these planets as parts, we're moving into this realm of eternal family systems, which is incredible therapy that works with parts like the protector or the firefighter. The parts of us that usually were, suppressed growing up, or they had trauma that they then had to move through, and then they have to put up certain blocks or armors to not allow that to erupt back out and create more trauma. So these parts are something that we want to start to study within ourselves and be able to call out. And the reason I love both astrology and human design is because they help us come into the witness state. In IFS, it's called the self. It's that centering witness that can see the different parts of itself. And this means also in relationship, we have to hold space for that process to happen. So one of the most challenging things about the first week of August and right now is we have a Mars-Venus square. And when Mars and Venus are square, typically there's a challenge and a tension between the masculine and feminine. And it's an immutable sign, Gemini, Mars, Venus and Virgo. And Venus in Virgo is very, attuned to what's not working in a relationship. Now, she can also be very refined and really about bringing service into partnerships. And so we might think of acts of service as something that we begin this month with, and getting curious about our partners, getting interested in storytelling our relationship, Mars and Gemini, Maybe there's new possibilities. Maybe we can write letters to each other that honor each other, acknowledge each other. Now that's beautiful also for the sun in Leo, right? Where we want to be recognized and acknowledged. That's another love language, right? Which is words of affirmation. It fits Gemini, it fits Leo. How does that show up for you in your relationships right now? Or acts of service? And if you haven't studied the love languages, it's a brilliant tool, and it's a simple way of bringing attention to and attuning to a partner or a child or a parent. We all have these different love languages. And some of the teaching I've done around Mars and Venus, I express that these different archetypes, these 12 zodiac signs, are all kind of different love languages. And as you study more about your entire relationship astrology, and your human design and relationship, you learn your love languages in partnership. And it can be very fun because you can also learn, these tantric sacred sexuality practices for those love languages that really fit those archetypes. So that's a lot of the work I do in relationship coaching, is helping clients find that, helping couples find that, find the ways they can connect deeper. And one of the things with Mars Venus square is you're probably going to have some friction and you're going to have to move through it. And you want to take a curious approach, which is because Mercury is ruling where Mars and Venus are. They're in Gemini and Virgo. And where's Mercury right now? Cancer. And he starts the month in Cancer and he ends the month of July in Cancer. So there will be some shifts. Mercury will move into Leo, and we'll look at that again in a moment. But just to say that that's an emotionally sensitive sign. We've been with Mercury in Cancer for most of the last 2 months. And so we're working out, inner child, working out our domestic sphere and creating safety and security there. And we're looking at this full moon with a theme of fairness and equality. I'm going to pull the map back up. The chart back up, because fairness and equality are themes associated with Juno, who's this really important asteroid, the goddess of committed partnerships and marriage. And it's interesting because in the myth, Juno and Jupiter were a couple, Hera and Zeus. And it was a very dramatic soap opera between the two of them. And this is a very dramatic soap opera transit, because we might want, more freedom, Jupiter, more expansion, Jupiter, more growth. But then Juno may want us to get real and look at what commitments we're in. But also she's in a very open sign, a sign that's more liberal, progressive, experimental in relationships. And so, we don't want to be too stubborn with this energy right now. It's fixed energy. We have to be careful of that. So let's look at what happens over the next week with the shift into August. And just to say that, here we're going to see the nodes shift. And let's take it here, because this is a big transit day, August 7th, because Venus moves into Libra, her home sign. And we're going to feel that quite a lot. Venus is more social. She's more, this could be a great time if you're going to a festival, the month after this. She's going to have a really nice trine to Uranus here. And so it's a beautiful time to experiment in your relationship or try something new, have some fun, be more eccentric and playful, go out and do some cool cultural, social things together, you know, learn your astrology and design. I've been doing a lot of that work with clients and have some cool reports for you to explore with that. Uranus is the higher mind. It's metaphysical. So bring that into your relationships. Look at the days when that is exact are going to be the Venus-Uranus trine is August 12th, actually on the day of the eclipse. But before we get to the eclipse, let's look at Mercury shifting into Leo. So that's coming August 9th, 10th. And as that happens, this is very important because this is going to bring up some of the themes of what we're dealing with right now, today, this week, because Mercury will oppose Juno and Pluto. So we get some of that flavor. Oftentimes we have to be careful with what we're saying. Um, we want to research, we want to investigate, we want to go to the source of whatever an issue is. Probably there's going to be some, relational issues or issues around commitment or soul contracts that we have in our life. I think of Juno as that, and how we need to um, be communicating about Juno themes of fairness and equality and balance of give and receive. Um, and that's where true transformation can come. Mercury in Leo loves to play, it loves to be creative. It's great if we're performing and speaking. And so we start to get this stronger Leo energy. And then it's just on the 12th that we have that eclipse right here at 19 Leo. Um, so this is going to be the first in the series of Leo Aquarius eclipses over the next 19 months. We've been talking about that. But it's a south node eclipse, which means we have to, release some of the shadow of that Leo self, and kind of some of the poor me that can come in there, and access the highest expression of Leo, generous, boundless love. I think of Al-Karim, one of the names of Allah, the most generous and noble one. How generosity is connected to nobility. And Al-Khaliq, the creative one, the expressive one. Um, so this this eclipse will be very strong. It is a total solar eclipse over Iceland and Spain, mostly, in a small band there. Um, so we'll be very strong, and you can see it in parts of Europe as well, like partial. So definitely put this date down. And eclipse windows really start to bring in a big change in our life. It may be our relationships. It may be where we live. It may be the communities that we're a part of, like, as we've been talking about. Um, our creative path, right, with this. So we should expect even in the next couple of weeks to start to feel what these eclipses will be about. And look, Mars comes into Cancer at this time. Now, that's Mars's fall. He's exalted in the sign of Capricorn, the opposite sign. He's in his fall in Cancer. And yeah, so we had a long retrograde. You may remember that the last time Mars was retrograde, if we take it back, it was in Cancer. Let's look at that real quick here. So that would have began here in September of 2024. If you want to think back to that time, Mars activating your Cancer house. And there it is. There's that retrograde that started in January of 2025. And we had that long winter of Mars in Cancer. It's very emotional, very process oriented. We have a challenge moving forward kind of out in the world, which is sort of more of a Capricorn theme, right? With Mars in Capricorn. But that's the exaltation, ambitious, driven, entrepreneurial, get shit done, accomplishment, achievement. In Cancer, we got to go in, and we've been in that Cancer period, right? We had Mercury retrograde, we've had the Sun in Cancer, and now Mars is going to get there. So what do we need to process? How do we feel safe? We have to watch passive aggressive energy emotionally. Emotional manipulation sometimes can happen with Mars in Cancer. Moodiness, but also we want to protect our space. We want to come into building that, working on the house, creating nurturing community vibes, family vibes, hearth, right? Good potlucks we can share with each other and really get to know each other, right? And have fun. There's a lot of Leo energy here too, but just know that we'll be sensitive with this, and this will be into, the mid to late part of September. So moving us forward, look at what happens here with Venus opposite Saturn starting around the 19th, 20th. This is also very significant. Um, because, and here's the exact opposition, because relationships usually get tested around these days for at least, 5 to 6 days. What are we committed to? We may look at a good time to renew some vows or to, check on what we are building together, what foundation, what stability, what feels solid or needs to be adjusted in a relationship, but also in our finances. Sometimes we feel like we have less, but we want to get more accountable and responsible with a Venus-Saturn opposition. So any contraction that's coming up around our values, the the feminine element within all of us, our relationships, it's asking for the magnifying glass. Saturn always puts that on and says, look at this, study this. And also may just be like, are are we being too social, too cultural, maybe trying to do too many things? Venus and Libra can do that. Maybe we're just trying to maintain the peace at all costs, but this brings up like the need for a little bit of, getting real, reality check, kind of honoring that some things need to be shifted. Yeah. We're setting the stage, for the next week, the big eclipse that comes in. Um, but we do have Mars square Neptune. So if you see Neptune is right here. So I'm backing up just a bit here, and we're looking at, the 16th, 17th, 18th right here. This is the Mars Neptune square, which can confuse us. We have a sense of disorientation at that time. We might get a little fiery or kind of crusading about a certain perspective that we have. Um, it's really good to do some spiritual practice at this time that is, you know, it could be movement based. Maybe you want to get on the water, like get on the river in the lake and do some water sports, kayaking, swimming, stand up paddleboard, get that Cancer energy, water, get that Neptune symbol. And and just know that sometimes we don't feel super clear, or direction oriented. So I think like that 15th to 22nd, definitely because of Mars in Cancer, Mars square Neptune. Um, yeah, just seeking more of the spiritual, some relaxation, maybe, not overdoing things at that time. And if we move forward to our other big event of the month, it's going to be the lunar eclipse on the 28th. Um, and this is going to be, so it's at 4, actually. Let's bring it back here. It's going to be at 4 Pisces, and the lunar eclipse is also going to be very conjunct, very close to Mercury. So actually, it depends on where you are in the world. But so late night 27, morning 28th. Here it is. Now, this is important, and this is a much more wild card, crazy making eclipse because, first of all, it's squaring Uranus very tightly. And you want to look at the early degrees of the mutable signs Sagittarius, Gemini, Virgo, and Pisces. Those of you with those planets at those degrees are going to be hit really hard by this eclipse. And there can be some shaking up of some things, some quaking, some changes, some surprises. So prepare for this now, batten down the hatches, as they say, and just get more solid in what you're doing. maybe there's a breakthrough that can come from this, a new perspective, an innovation. Maybe it's something technological you're working with. Maybe you're sensing I need more freedom. These are all Uranian themes. Um, there may be some tech challenges or something a bit wonky with exchanges, maybe on the markets. Um, you know, Mercury and Uranus will be square during this, Sun and Uranus square. So this is not like a great travel day in any way. I would be very, very cautious. Eclipses in general are never good travel days. Um, Full moons are typically challenging as well, but definitely eclipses and definitely a lunar eclipse, which is a full moon. Um, but there is some kind of breakthrough potential here. Um, there can be some great downloads. I'd be reading a lot. Mercury's in Virgo, is home sign, so that's nice. Mercury moves into Virgo a few days before this, so that's a big shift, and that's going to happen just 24th to 25th. We love Mercury in Virgo. He's very efficient. He's much more accountable. He can be very organized, and there's some good healing energies that could come during that time. Um, Mercury is methodical, thinks things through, can fix things. So this will happen. Of course, the Sun will be in Virgo by that time too, and so we do get more into we start to get that back to school feeling, or getting more down to what we're trying to craft and commit to, and put that dedicated devotional energy of Virgo into. And meanwhile, this eclipse in Pisces, and it's the last one we'll have. So think back to some recent eclipses in Pisces, 6 months before. Um, you want, you want to think about your spiritual growth, your imagination, working with the dreams during this eclipse could be very strong. Um, your spiritual practice, I think, is really important here, because we're looking at the Virgo Pisces axis, the commitment daily, um, not just ecstatic experiences, and meditation. What is that like for you and your contemplative work? Right? So this is a very strong, very radical eclipse, and we should expect a lot of change and surprises, between these two eclipses coming in. And I feel like September is very different than August, and August is at times crazy, at times, chilled out, and it could be a bit of a wild ride. Um, so let's stop the share. And yeah, if we want to have any comments in the live chat, we really want to thank you for being on. It's a really wild month ahead, and it begins right now with this huge Jupiter, Juno, Pluto, Moon, Sun eclipse feeling in the sky, but it's a full moon. And we want to inspire you again. What's your spiritual evolution and revolution right now? What's going to break you through to another level of consciousness? I'm going to share one last thing with you, which is an exciting announcement that I have a new YouTube channel, and so I want to invite you to check it out. It's all about astrocartography and human design, and this is the work I've been doing for 20 years, and I live it. I'm living in Germany right now for a few months, but I have 47 countries that I want to share stories from, as well as some client case studies and famous charts. So uh, find your power places, VerDarLuz, Astrocartography and Human Design. And I would love to support you, of course, with this work. So check out the first 3 videos on there, all about finding love on my Venus line, getting burnt out, and how that could happen with astrocartography, and what happened to me when I was 17, and how it compelled me to go into world travels, into seizing the day. So thank you all for joining our live stream. This is the first live stream I've done on Substack, so thank you for being here. And definitely tune in to the YouTube. It's also a podcast, so you'll see all of that in the live stream update on my next Substack post. So thank you all. Wishing you well on this full moon. and find your tribe, create, perform, play, get out in nature, and offer everything you do to the Great Spirit. Well wishes. Namaste.